We need to talk about the Epstein Files. We're going to unpack what is easily one of the most disturbing and frankly far-reaching scandals of our time. In this explainer, we're breaking down what those thousands of recently released pages actually reveal.
I want you to just imagine something for a second. What if some of the world's most powerful people, we're talking presidents, royalty, titans of science and business, what if they all shared a dark, terrible secret? A secret that was hidden away from all of us on a private island. You know, it really sounds like the plot of some crazy thriller, but this is all too real. In January 2024, that secret was basically cracked wide open when thousands of pages of court documents were finally unsealed. And we're here to break down exactly what that means.
So, let's start right there with what just happened. In January 2024, a secret that had been locked away for decades was suddenly and very publicly brought into the light. The big question is, what was actually in this massive document dump?
Well, the sheer volume of it is just staggering. After a really long legal fight, we're talking about nearly 4,500 pages of previously sealed court documents that were just released to the public.
And buried inside all of those pages were the identities of over 150 people. Now, these were associates, victims, and witnesses, people whose names had been hidden from all of us by a court order. A lot of them under those pseudonyms you hear about, like Jane and John Doe.
Okay, and this is probably the most important point to understand right off the bat. This release did not involve any new criminal charges. These are unsealed documents from a civil lawsuit that was filed way back in 2015. So think of it this way. A criminal case is when the government goes after someone for a crime. A civil case, like this one, is between two private parties over some kind of harm. This was a massive info dump from that lawsuit, not a new round of arrests.
But to really get why this is such a seismic event, we have to go back. We have to talk about the man at the center of this entire dark web. So, who exactly was Jeffrey Epstein? This right here really captures the chilling double life he led. The public image? He was a wealthy financier, a guy who was friends with presidents and royalty, a real elite social connector. But the hidden reality? Well, it was an absolute nightmare. He was a convicted sex offender who ran a global sex trafficking ring and systematically abused underage girls for years.
And this brings us to a really key concept here: systemic power. Look, this isn't just about having a lot of money. It's about using that wealth and that influence to build a fortress around yourself, hiring armies of lawyers to silence victims, using your media connections to control the story, and leveraging your relationships with other powerful people to just make consequences disappear. Epstein's story is a terrifying case study in how this system protects the powerful, often for decades.
So, you have to be asking yourself, how did he operate this whole network right out in the open for so long? Well, it was a very carefully constructed web of power, and it was built around three key things: a private jet, a private island, and a very important accomplice.
Epstein's method was chillingly methodical. He used his private jet, which was infamously nicknamed the Lolita Express, to fly powerful people all over the world. And the main destination was often his private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, a place called Little St. James. The whole operation was protected by his high-level political and social connections, which basically created this powerful shield of credibility around him.
But he didn't do it alone, not by a long shot. His main partner in these crimes was Ghislaine Maxwell. She was his longtime associate, and, crucially, she was convicted for her role in recruiting, grooming, and trafficking young women and girls for Epstein.
And for her central role in this horrific enterprise, Ghislaine Maxwell was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison.
Okay, so let's circle back to those 4,500 pages we talked about. What's actually in these files? It's so important to decode what the documents contain, and just as important, what they don't.
The entire document release, every single page, stems from one specific case, that 2015 civil lawsuit filed by one of his victims, Virginia Giuffre, against Ghislaine Maxwell. The testimony, the emails, the flight logs from that lawsuit, that's the source of everything we're seeing now.
And these documents detail connections between Epstein and a truly shocking list of prominent people. I mean, the source material mentions names like former presidents Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, Britain's Prince Andrew, and even world-renowned scientist Stephen Hawking and the magician David Copperfield.
And this brings us to what is, without a doubt, the most critical piece of context for this entire story. As this quote says, being named in these files does not prove a crime was committed. Let me say that again. It does not prove a crime. But what it does prove, unequivocally,
is a connection.
So all of this brings us to the final part of our explainer, the aftermath of all these revelations, the current state of justice, and the really deep, lingering mystery that's still hanging over everything.
So let's just recap the timeline real quick to put it all in perspective. The legal battle really kicks off in 2015 with Gufer's lawsuit. Then, in 2019, Epstein dies in his jail cell while he's awaiting trial. In 2022, his accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, gets her sentence. And that brings us right up to 2024, when the names from that original 2015 case are finally made public.
So, what has the impact of all this been? Well, the release of these files has exposed a breathtaking level of hypocrisy, and it sparked these renewed global demands for way more accountability for every single powerful person who was in Epstein's orbit.
And at the end of the day, that leaves us with the central, unresolved question at the heart of this entire saga. The files are finally open, the connections are exposed, but will the powerful people who enabled and participated in this network ever truly be held accountable? That remains the story.